What's up, YouTube fragrance family? Tommy with Studio Sense here, and welcome to a brand new series. This is the very first video in this series called the Presentation Series. There are a couple things about men's fragrance that men find very important. So if you could break it down into three categories, there would be presentation, smell, or aroma, and overall performance. So today we're going to be taking a look at 10 fragrances that have a single thing in common, their presentation, and see if we can't find some common ground or other commonalities. And just like these 10 fragrances proved this to me, today they're going to prove to you that the color of cold is gold. That and more is coming up, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the very first video in the presentation series, where we take a closer look at fragrance presentation, how that it looks, and how it impacts how we view the fragrance and how it impacts how that we wear it. The very first fragrance was released in 2020. It is a Tom Ford fragrance. It is Tom Ford Black Orchid. Black Orchid has to be one of the most lavish, luxurious fragrances that a man could hope to wear. Now, originally Black Orchid was for women, then it crossed over in the threshold of unisex, and then a lot of guys simply love this particular version of Black Orchid. What do I mean by the color of cold is gold? Well, the presentation of all of these fragrances, as you now know, is going to be gold. They all have that single thing in common. But what's interesting is not only are all of these gold, but they also have a lot more things in common. So let's talk a little bit about Tom Ford's Black Orchid. Of course, in Black Orchid is going to be its namesake. You've got Black Orchid, you've got Black Truffle, which is a really rich chocolatey base in this. You've also got a nice rum absolute. There's some floral notes. You've got ylang ylang. There's also a bit of black plum in here, and finally some patchouli. This is almost like a mix of all base notes because they're all going to be very dense, very heavy. Black Orchid is definitively a cool weather fragrance. I'm really stoked that cold weather is here. It's when you want to wear a fragrance that makes you feel completely luxurious, competent, and dressed up. Black Orchid by Tom Ford. Next up in our color of cold is, of course, another gold fragrance by Alfred Dunhill. It is Icon Absolute. Icon Absolute is in kind of a canister format. I really like that gold look. And then you take it off and you got your really nice gold atomizer there. This one is, oh man, similar to Black Orchid, this one is a powerfully projecting, long-lasting eau de parfum for men, featuring primarily Egyptian jasmine. You've got black rose, you've got oud, of course, since it's an oud-based fragrance, tobacco leaf, Tuscan leather, and in the open, just a bit of bergamot and black pepper to set the precedent. Just like Black Orchid, this is definitely for colder weather. So not only does it have the color of gold in common, these two fragrances so far, but they also have some really dense, dark, rich, heavy notes. Is that going to be the case going forward? You bet it is. So let's jump into our next fragrance. When this fragrance was released, it was primarily released for the Middle Eastern market. Then we got it. This is one of my favorite in the series of Stronger With You fragrances. This one is Stronger With You Leather. Stronger With You Leather, just like the name, has the focal point of leather, but it's not a super powerful, strong leather. It's just really kind of in the background there, because if you know anything about Stronger With You, it's a very modern, sweet, gourmand fragrance. That DNA is strictly the same in this one, but you got a little bit of resins in there, a little bit of resinous leather. And again, gotta love that bottle. That gold is beautiful looking. The one thing about gold, unless it's like a satin or eggshell finish, when you look at the bottle, you can kind of see your own reflection in the bottle. It's like having a little mirror. It's just another neat nod as to the luxury of the presentation. And also, again, the color of cold, gold, cold weather fragrance. This is one you definitely do not want to wear in warmer weather. But this is another leather-based fragrance similar to Icon Absolute. Fantastic for cooler weather. Similar to Black Orchid, this came out in 2020 as well. If you have not tried this particular one and you do like the other flankers in the Stronger With You line, I highly recommend to pick this one up. You will not regret it. Stronger With You Leather. Next up in our color of cold is a brand new release for 2021. It is Dolce & Gabbana's The One Gold. Of course, you could have guessed this one. This one looks kind of like a brick of gold. It's like it came right off of a pallet of gold bars in the National Treasury. But it also happens to be a very clean, warm, and sexy fragrance. This one has quite a few similarities to the more popular One Eau de Parfum version, and for that reason, I really do like it. The only problem with this fragrance is its performance. It doesn't perform supremely well. But again, all we're doing is really comparing it to all these other fragrances that are gold as well, that have things in common. And as it turns out, this is also a cold weather fragrance. Blood orange, red ginger, clary sage, Egyptian geranium, patchouli, Haitian vetiver, and amberwood in the base. It's a little bit muted and less of a spicy fragrance than what you might think, and more of an amber-based or warm amber-oriented fragrance. But in comparison to the ones that we've talked about, yes, it's a cold weather fragrance. It's gold, it's lightly sweet, and also very warm and inviting. Dolce & Gabbana, the One Gold. Next up is another relatively new fragrance, came out in 2020 by the House of Diesel. It is Spirit of the Brave Intense. I really like this presentation because it has kind of like an inked lion in black against a gold background. And again, just like all these others, this is kind of a reflective gold, looks really cool. It's a typical Diesel fist, and I really enjoy just how spicy and fresh this fragrance is. Contains some of my favorite fragrant notes for, you guessed it, cold weather. Just another cold weather banger here. Once you get past that bright fruity apple and bergamot handshake in the open, then you're on to cypress and sage in the heart. Then you've got a base of amber, vanilla, and patchouli. And if you know anything about Diesel's Spirit of the Brave fragrances, they are very masculine. So this one smells super masculine, super modern, but this one has that spicy cold weather feel about it that's super appealing, and it performs extremely well. Spirit of the Brave Intense. Our next fragrance has too many notes to even remember, but the end results are really enjoyable. It is an English laundry fragrance, probably the only one that you could think of that's gold. It is Notting Hill. For the longest time I called this Nottingham for some reason, but no, Notting Hill. Notting Hill is an interesting fragrance because it's one of those for kind of really all seasons. It's one that's not specifically for cold weather just because of the note breakdown. This one has a ton of citrus notes in it, fruity notes in it, but it also has a really nice mix of, in the base, you've got amber, you've got tonka bean, you've got patchouli, there are lots of woods in the base as well. So it's an overall very enjoyable fragrance. Now the performance on this isn't super great, but then English Laundry isn't really well known for their performance. They're well known for being very inexpensive. So this is one of the more inexpensive fragrances in this list, but again, you got to give it kudos for being completely gold. And it's probably one that has the least in common with its other gold brothers and sisters in this list. But it's an extremely enjoyable fragrance and really inexpensive. English Laundry's Notting Hill. Next up is another one that's a relatively recent release, came out in 2020, and it is the quintessential gold bar by Paco Rabanne, 1 Million Parfum. 1 Million Parfum is another one of those sweet, loud bangers, but don't let that prevent you from using it if you're not young and if you don't go clubbing, because it's a really enjoyable cold weather fragrance as well. Now this one you can wear year round, but because of the fragrant notes in it, I think that are best used in colder weather. But I would be wary about wearing it in warmer weather because it's so sweet, and that sweetness opens up quite a bit the warmer that it gets. In cooler weather, it keeps that DNA and that sweetness captive right against your skin and creates a wonderful sillage trail. Of course, this one isn't completely gold because you have the glass in the back, but that front is more kind of, I guess, bronze than gold, or more gold bronze. But I couldn't not include it in this list. This one features tuberose, ambroxan, cashmerean, leather, a little bit of patchouli in there in that base to keep it well grounded. This one I really enjoy wearing, and a lot of people do. Paco Rabanne 1 Million Parfum. This next fragrance has recently celebrated its 11th year of making men everywhere smell fantastic. It is from the house of Scent Story, who we don't really hear a lot from these days, but this is one of their claim to fame. It is 24 Gold. 24 Gold, not really necessarily based on the television show, or very loosely based on it. I did a first impression of this a while ago, and I really enjoyed this fragrance. It's one that I look forward to getting off the shelf every year when cool weather comes around. As an oud-based fragrance, it's really hard to beat this one. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it, but it's surrounded by some really nice grounded floral notes. You've got the wonderful combination of jasmine and ylang-ylang, which are the two notes that go best, the two floral notes that go best with like saffron and oud. It's got a little bit of aniseed in here to give it kind of a rich licorice or liqueur-like presence, and some amber and patchouli in the base, some ambroxan. This one is a fantastic banger. The performance is amazing on this little bottle. This one grew more and more expensive and more hard to find, but there are some out there. I highly recommend, if you don't have yourself a little bottle of this gold wonder, definitely pick it up if you can. 24 Gold. Alright guys, next up on our color of cold is another fragrance. It is a relatively new release. It's only been out for like a year, I think 2020. It is a Giorgio Armani fragrance, Armani Code Absolute Gold. I really enjoy Code Absolute, but Absolute Gold is just a little bit better in my estimation. They are almost on par. It's really hard to pick a favorite, but most of the time I find myself, especially in cooler weather, choosing this one. I think there's a little bit extra pinch of cinnamon in this one that I really enjoy, plus green apple. I love green apple, especially in cold weather fragrances, because it adds just a bit of freshness, like a freshet of a fruit, which is really interesting. It's a nice contrast, especially for a cool weather fragrance, because it makes you think of summertime, some of the better benefits of warm weather, while you're wearing a cold weather fragrance. This one also is extremely spicy, and of course, it features gold. The entire body of the presentation is completely gold, which was the only requisite for all of these fragrances. You've got iris, saffron, some multiple spices, a little bit of leather to add some resinous roughness that really makes it, adds to the smoothness actually. You've got tonka bean absolute, you've got guaiac wood, there's benzoin, really warm and adds to the sweetness, that and the tonka bean, and some other woods in here as well. It's just an epic fragrance. It's probably one of my favorite out of the Armani Code line, and one of the better cold weather fragrances, Armani Code Absolute Gold. We're down to our very last gold fragrance, and if it hasn't been proven to you yet that the color of cold is actually gold, I can't really help you. This one won't really change your mind or be the tipping point, because it's not a specific cold weather fragrance. It's more of an all-around wear anytime fragrance. This is one of those Aventus twist fragrances by Alfred Dunhill. It is Alfred Dunhill Desire Gold. Of course, because it's all gold, I had to include it in this list. That's the one thing that binds it to its brothers and sisters that you've seen in this video, is the gold presentation, which I really like. This one also has that kind of flask-like lid that you can... This one actually is a really solid contender for being one of the better Aventus fragrances. It's got that nice lightly smoky birch in the background that Aventus has, but it's got a ton of pineapple. It's very fruity, very bright, and it doesn't perform that bad as well. So you could do worse in terms of Aventus clones, and it's a really enjoyable fragrance. But it's, again, a year-round fragrance. You can wear it in cooler weather, sure, but it's also one of those year-round fragrances similar to the fragrance that it's mimicking, Aventus. So 2 fragrances out of 10 weren't specifically for cooler weather, but can be worn during cooler weather. So you could say confidently, without any doubt, that the color of cold is definitely gold. Well guys, that puts a wrap on this very first video in the presentation series. I hope you've got some experience with these gold presentation fragrances. If you do, let me know that in the comments below. And if you know of any other fragrances out there that have that gold presentation that I missed, and I'm sure there are, let me know that in the comments as well. Guys, thanks so much for stopping by and checking out today's video. And as always, thank you so much for your support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow.